Good morning from Jakarta. It's my honor to be asked by the APRN committee to share with you some thoughts on how the PR industry might cope with the new normal once the pandemic comes under some sort of a control. It is actually a very tricky topic because it requires you to look into the future. And whenever human beings try to look into the future and try to guess what's happening, most of the time we get it gloriously wrong. It's also difficult because new normal is a tricky concept in the sense that what is the new normal? Is it back to business as usual? Is it back to business but being able to do 80-90% of the things we did and not being able to do the other 20%? Or is it really going to be back business as usual in the sense that if you look at past plagues and diseases like malaria, smallpox, they wreaked a lot of damage and they disrupted a lot of things. But when a vaccine was found, when a cure was found, the world went back to normal and it was business as usual. So the old normal became the new normal. So what I'll try to do, however, is to look at the trends, because I think that what this epidemic has done is that it has acted as a catalyst in accelerating certain trends that already were underlying the PR industry. It was already happening, the trends were there, but for one reason or another, it didn't quite take off. But COVID has forced us really to confront these things and in certain ways has changed it all, and it will push us to a point of no return so that we have to cope with these changes or we would not survive. So let me begin by sharing a few major trends here. The first trend that I want to talk about is the decline of the mainstream media. For years, we depended on the mainstream media as our primary sources of information. They were a voice of authority, a voice of credibility. We got all our information from newspapers, from television, from radio. Then the internet came about and things started to change. No longer are the mainstream media the primary sources of information. There are competitors. The competitors come in the shape of social media. The competitors come in the shape of influencers. The competitors come in the shape of key opinion leaders and community portals. So what we see here is that it's a very diffused situation here. Now, what this means for the PR industry is that for years, the PR industry made a lot of money from media relations. Even today, I know of some firms whose main revenue is media relations. I think that's going to go away. Not entirely, but it's going to reduce in importance, because what it means now is that people are not getting their information mainly from the mainstream media. They're getting their information from social media. So what we need to do is, as an industry, is to be very familiar with the PESO model of looking at media. And PESO, for those who are not familiar, is pay, earn, share and own, right? So PESO. How it works is that you get earned media from whatever mainstream media that's left that's credible. And this is where I think dealing with only credible media makes sense. Dealing with second, third tier media increasingly makes no sense. So you work with the mainstream media, you get the coverage. And let's say you get a quarter page in a top newspaper. But what good is that? Because nobody reads newspapers these days. Well, what you can do is use that earned media and the credibility that comes from it, and you can flip it into your own media, which is basically your Facebook page, your Twitter, etc. You could do a screen grab, you could do a scan and post it in your own media. And if you've got followers, you've got a community that supports you, they will share this media. So it becomes shared media. And you can use paid media such as Facebook ads, sponsored tweets, etc., even influencers, to point attention to your own media. So that's how it works, and that's how we get the word out. What this means is that it's a very selective amount of media relations and a move into content production. We need to produce content that entertains, content that informs, content that's engaging. And we need to have these skills. So the PR companies that don't adapt to that will not cope. COVID will accelerate this, so that in the new normal, because a lot of things will be done on the internet, we have to help companies become publishers and produce content. And only when we can do that will we be able to help get the word out. The second trend that I want to talk about is the rise of remote working. Again, this is a trend that was kind of there, except that we were dragging our feet on this. Remote working is nice, working from home is nice, but you need the office because, unless you get people together, you can't get work done, people will scoff off, etc., etc. Then COVID comes along and everybody is forced to work from home. And what did we find? We find that actually it works. In my office anyway, and a lot of offices that I know, productivity is not affected. In fact, actually, there might be an argument that productivity increases because the workers don't spend those hours commuting, so they save on that time and they use that to do work. And a lot of people working from home actually face this problem that they find it difficult to delineate between work life and home life. So they end up working more. People will find a balance, but the upshot of it all is that working from home, remote working, is now a reality. And I think that once the new normal comes, if it does, we're not going to go back to the old ways. So then the question is, what do we have to do to cope about it? I think we need to embrace the fact that remote working is here to stay. And where remote working is concerned, and for my office, for instance, when we approach the new normal, we would probably get people to come in once or twice per week, and that's it. And not so much for work, but for what we would call a cultural rejuvenation. We feel that in any organization, the culture is very important because it determines how you work, what sort of standards you adopt, and that needs a face-to-face kind of interaction. So our workers will come in probably twice a week, mainly to meet with social distances in the new normal, and actually mingle with each other and reinforce the culture. And that's what they do. Then there is the question of, okay, so then what happens? Well, the rest of the time, they go home, they work from home because it works. So why bother, especially, in a city like Jakarta, before COVID hit, the traffic jams are phenomenal. People could be commuting for 3-4 hours a day, and that's just a big waste of time. So if work can be done without all that commute, why not? The big problem, however, is what do you do with your office then? Apart from it being a cultural rejuvenation hub, we think that the space that we have, for instance, we are actively thinking of converting them more into production facilities to produce the content that I spoke about in the previous point. Because you need to be able to produce videos, you need to have studio facilities, you need to produce podcasts and other content for our clients. So that, I think, is where we all are moving. Again, because of COVID, it accelerates that, so that number one, you can't go back to, full-time in the office, I think. And number two is that spare capacity in that office, you got to think of using it productively in other areas. The third trend, I think, that has been happening and will be accelerated by COVID is in measurement. Why measurement? For years and years, public relations has had a problem. And the problem is this: we can say that we want to do all the sorts of things, all sorts of campaigns, but when somebody asks you, how do I know that my money is being well spent? What does success look like? We are at pains to try to explain it. The best that we could come up with was that, well, look at all these clippings, we got you, and it's all positive, and your message is there, and it's great. Yes, but if the CEO were to ask us, how does that affect my business? We could say, well, it should increase your reputation and therefore it could be doing this. But can you quantify that? And we can't. We can't, because all these years, what we have as proof of our value is just AVEs, advertising value equivalents, which is actually the wrong metric. We need to move that, because so long as we keep doing this, we are not speaking the same language as the CEO and CFO, because theirs is a language whereby if I spend this money, what am I getting out? How is it changing my business? And unless we can speak that same language, PR will never have the cachet that it should. It'll never earn a seat in the management table. How do we cope with this? Because COVID is going to push things. Companies will be facing very tight financial situations. They will be much more careful with their money. And CFOs and CEOs will want to know, if I spend this money, how is it going to help my business? Fortunately, the tools are there and the framework is there for us to demonstrate success, and a success that can change the business. Where tools are concerned, there's plenty. You go into the market and you look around, you have things like TalkWalker, you have NewsWhip, you have BrandWatch, and a whole lot of tools. The tricky part about this is that each of the tools, they're good at doing one or two things, they're not good at doing the other. So part of our skill should be to be able to identify which tools to use for what type of clients based on what they want to do. But it's all there. So all we need to do is to develop some expertise and knowledge on how to use these tools. The other thing is that how do we measure? What do we measure? Again, we're fortunate because AMEC, the Association for Measurement Effectiveness in Communication, has come up with a framework. And it's called the AMEC Measurement Framework, whereby whether it's on conventional media or online or on social media, you can measure success there. And success is divided into three things at least. The 3 O's of measurement, they call it. The output, outtakes, and outcomes. Output is what comes out of all our efforts. So you call a press conference, you have 50 news clips from there, that's your output, right? But an output just tells you really how hard you've been working. It doesn't tell you anything else. It doesn't tell you, for instance, whether the level of awareness among your targeted audience has changed, whether their attitudes have changed, the level of understanding about a product or a company has changed. It doesn't tell you that. This comes under the category of outtakes. So outtakes is when your awareness and understanding or perception of a brand changes. Then there are outcomes. It's like, what is the outcome of it all? People know about this, their attitudes change, and then what do they do? What do you want them to do? Now, especially when things move towards being digital and online, all this can be measured. Do you drive clicks? Do you drive people to websites? Do you get people to engage in a brand? All these things can be measured, and these are the outcomes will actually depend on what the objectives of the company are. So we have to be very insistent that companies be very clear about what their communications objectives are. This is something that isn't always done in PR, and I think we need to do that. So in moving forward, how PR will need to cope with the fact that there will be a rise, there will be a greater demand for better measurement and better reporting to CEOs and CFOs, is that we need to master the tools, and we need to use perhaps the AMEC framework, which is probably the best at the moment, to measure and take measurement seriously, because in public relations most of the time people don't take measurement seriously. If we take measurement seriously, then we can start talking to CEOs and CFOs in a language they understand, and that will get PR much further. The fourth trend that I want to talk about is the rise of purpose-driven communications or purpose-driven companies. We've seen this coming, but COVID is going to accelerate this again, this trend. I think the world is a strange place now where there's actually very little trust. There's a lot of hate speech, there's a lot of fake news, even deep fakes. So that in a world where there is a lack of trust, belief becomes important. Believe in a brand. Unless people believe in the brand, they're not going to be receptive to its marketing messages. Unless people believe in a brand and the purpose that it has, the brand is not going to have a social operating license. If a brand has that, then it starts to be relevant to the people. How COVID accelerates this is that because people are very uncertain now of their futures, a lot of people have lost their jobs. Still more are fearful of losing theirs. Business owners like me, we all worry, right? How long is our business going to last? Will we last? Will we outlast the pandemic until the new normal? So everyone is tense. Everyone's much more careful with their money. So what they want to hear from a company is something that is helpful to them in these circumstances, that's useful to them, and something that's totally relevant. If it's not helpful, useful, or relevant, then there's no reason why they should give you a second glance. And I think this is something that some companies have still to learn in this pandemic. They're carrying on like it's before, but what happens here is that there's a change, there's an acceleration and insistence that unless I believe in your company, I'm not going to be very receptive to whatever you have to say. Now, how do you build that belief? Well, it's the purpose of a company. This is something that has been coming, and COVID accelerates it. Does a company have purpose? A social purpose that's higher than just making money. If it has, it's easier for them to recruit the best people. It insulates them against a lot of attacks, and it makes people feel that it's okay, I'll buy their products because I believe in this company, I trust this company. Now, this is the province of public relations. This is a great opportunity for public relations people to shine. And to shine, what we need to do to cope with these changes that COVID has brought is that we need to develop our vocabulary, to talk to companies, to talk to executives on how to activate their corporate character, on how to define and articulate their purpose, and how to go about communicating this purpose so that in all the communications that purpose rings, that purpose comes out throughout everything they say and do. The net effect is that the company starts to sound very authentic, the company starts to sound relevant, useful, and helpful. And that is when people will pay attention to them. This is particularly so because on the internet, everybody is there. And unless you start to sound genuine and authentic, you get lost in that noise. So it's highly important that we do this. And how we cope with that? Develop the vocabulary, develop the expertise, and that's where we can shine the most. So here we have it. We have 4 trends that are being accelerated by the pandemic that will result in a new normal, whether the pandemic gets over it or not. That will be the new normal for public relations. When you look at it, it's actually a great opportunity for PR because what is needed is authenticity, transparency, purpose. This is what PR was actually born to do. So the opportunity lies before us. The question is, are we nimble enough to take advantage of it? Are we willing to change? In my firm, for instance, we're handing the reins over to a much younger generation because they are so plugged in to the new economy, the new ways of doing things, that the old people start to move aside and let them run things and let them reimagine the office for us. If we can do this, I think we can seize the opportunities in the new normal and really put PR at the center of it all. If we don't, then it's not COVID that'll finish us. It's our cousins in marketing communications, the advertising agencies, the digital agencies that will have our lunch and not leave us anything after that. So I leave you with this thought, and I hope that you find it provoking and perhaps spur some change. So good luck in the new normal.